Bravo, Christian. Nice.
Thank you. Wow. Perfect.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the exciting explanation of divide and divine. This is an absolute impossible card location because all the conditions are met for fairness. You can turn away, so you're not even looking. They can cut to literally any card. Everything can be shuffled, even whilst your back's turned. And the secret here is this: only until you turn back and collect the two packets up is when you know what value they're thinking of. And the actual method here will also narrow it down to two suits they could be thinking of. And then we're going to use some verbal techniques and some psychological observations to ascertain the exact card they're thinking of. So this is a merriment of techniques, and I'm going to go through everything methodologically now and chronologically. So the way that we get into this effect is quite nice. It happens from a new deck. So when you open any new deck, it comes in new deck order. This is USPCC order that it comes in. And to set up for this effect, we're simply going to be taking the suit that's at the front, in this case the spades, and we're going to be placing it between the back two suits. So in this case, the hearts and the clubs. So the way I do it in motion before the effect is I just spread the spades. I almost take them in a culling position to the back, I spread through, and I split between the hearts and the clubs. And now I've put those 13 cards in the middle. Now the deck is ready to go. The only thing I need to do now before the performance is to divide the deck in exactly half and do a perfect faro shuffle. And you will see that in the performance, I did this. I did a perfect faro in the actions of the actual presentation. So once I'm in this position, just to make it easier to get into the faro shuffle, I bend this portion this way and I bend this portion this way. By putting these two halves together, you'll see there's a nice bow in the middle where these packets can easily separate. And now these cards can be placed back in the box, ready for the performance. So, a bit fiddly. Okay, so now everything's ready to go. The way I like to do this is introduce myself, casually take the cards out, do any kind of full shuffle. So I like to do Ben Earl's optical shuffle. And then I immediately split the packet whilst I'm talking with them in half, and I do a faro shuffle. So as long as you make sure this faro shuffle is perfect, we've now secretly set up the deck in the position it needs to be for the routine. And what you'll see in the top half of the pack is that we have all the clubs and the hearts. And we have them in pairs, so you've got the aces, the twos, the threes, the fours, and so on, all the way to the middle, the kings. And then in the lower half of the pack, we have all the clubs and all the all the spades and all the diamonds. Right, so this is how it works. Because every single value is in pairs, going from the top down to the middle, they can do one of two things. They can cut a small portion, which is less than half, or they can cut a bigger portion, which is more than half. All we have to do to make this work and to know what value they're thinking of is to divide the amount of the smaller packet by 2, because the cards are in pairs. So for example, if they cut this amount, if I estimate this size of this packet to be about 12 cards, and I divide 12 by 2, it gives me the value of 6. And this tells me that they could be looking at a 6. But instead of just hoping that I get the exact estimation, once I've got that value 6, I also consider the values either side of it. So I also think it could be a 5 or it could be a 7. Let's have a look. So in this case, my estimation was slightly off, and it is exactly a 7, which means there's probably about 14 cards here, because half of 14 is 7. What's good about this though is because it's a small packet that they've cut, the spectator I'm performing on, I know immediately they're thinking of a club or a heart, okay? So in this case, if they cut a big portion of cards, What I'm now doing is I'm estimating the remaining portion here to ascertain the value that they're looking at here. So in this instance, I reckon there's about 14 cards here, maybe 15, 16. So that could be a 7 and 8. I would say it's a 7 or an 8. And now I'm kind of, as I say, we take the values either side. So if it was an 8, we take the 7 and the 9. This puts us in the ballpark to know what this card is. Now, I actually normally work with crushed stock playing cards, so estimating the amount here is a slight challenge for me. But as long as we gain this down to about 3 different values, it should be good. So this is what we do in performance. The deck is set. I often like to casually flick these cards towards the spectator. I make a comment saying, in a moment you're going to see one of these cards, but it will do this entirely hands off. And all I'm doing is inadvertently showing the mixture of reds and blacks. They won't see any type of sequence, they'll just see a merge of colours and values, which is good for this. You always use the box because it makes it nice and easy for them to cut the cards. And then I throw in an instruction, and the instruction is important to me because what it does is it verifies that there's no way the opposite person, okay, that you perform on can see what the card is you're cutting to. So I say, to begin with, I say, look, if I were to cut the cards here and look at this card, is there any way that you could know what this card is? Once they confirm there's no way, it means that when they cut the cards, they know that we can't know where they're cutting. So this is just to ramp up the impossibility of it and to make it seem as fair as possible. In addition to this, we're going to add the variable of turning away. So I perform this on 2 people. We're going to say spectator A on my left and spectator B on my right. When I'm performing this, I always perform for the person on my right, so it's spectator B, because I'm going to be collecting the cards up in this fashion. I'll take the cards that spectator A has first, and then I'll take spectator B's cards. And I always use my left hand in mechanics grip. If you're right-handed and you use your right hand, just mirror everything I'm doing. So here, let's do this now. Let's turn away. The spectator will cut anywhere they like, and they will look at a card. So they now have this packet in their hands. I've said, look at the card, remember it, and now shuffle your cards. So now they're going to be shuffling this packet here. I myself then say to spectator A, but I don't turn back, I say, please pick up the remaining cards and shuffle them as well. Now this is a complete magician fooler at this point, because if they're thinking that these cards could be stacked or marked, all of these things are out the window. As long as this procedure is done properly, you could literally be out of the room and it would still work. So right now, they're shuffling those cards, they're shuffling these cards, and I always take the cards back from spectator A first and then B. The moment I feel, when I take these cards back, the moment I feel there's less than half the deck, I know that they're thinking of a spade or a diamond. So we're immediately down to 2 suits. It's at this point where I roughly estimate the amount of cards I have in this hand. In this instance, I'd say there's probably about 18. So half of 18 is 9. I'm going to pivot around the 9. So I'll have the 9, the 8, or the 10. So I'm down to 3 values. And let's have a look. So they think of a 10, right? So I estimated 9, and as long as I account for the values either side, I'm going to nail the card that they're thinking of. So I've collected these up. I immediately know it's a spade or a diamond because I've got less than half here. And as these are returned, I notice the size of the packet, I divide by 2, and then I'm in the ballpark of what they're thinking of. The cards can continuously be shuffled like I do in the performance. Sometimes I just put them down and I forget about them entirely, and I perform with the spectator. So now we're down to one of 3 values. In fact, let me just do another example, and I'm going to follow through explaining how to read the person and to know exactly what they're thinking. So let's say they cut this amount here. They are going to be looking at this card. I then instruct them to shuffle. I instruct spectator A to shuffle the remaining cards. I then take these back first. I immediately feel there's more than half here, so I know that they've cut from the top portion. So I'm down to a club or a heart. And as I take this packet back is the moment I ascertain the size of it. In this case, it looks like there's about, I don't know, 16 cards. So half of 16 is an 8,